welcome back. We're talking about traumatic brain injury and all the ways that can mess up your life, and including decreasing empathy
and judgment.
And what I've found that the scans do is they increase the empathy of the people who are with them.
And that's critical, because if you think about, it would be so easy to get, like you would say, to get really angry and take it out on that person or leave that person, or if you're talking about if it's a domestic partner, but even if it's your child. So, even seeing one of my child who didn't have a brain injury, but it just helped me understand behavior so much more clearly.
Scan.
And then seeing my mom's who did have a traumatic brain injury really helped me understand why. It helped me understand my entire life, actually, but it really helped me understand her.
So in another study, people who suffered even a mild traumatic brain injury, which was defined as a head injury which left them feeling dazed or confused, were 60% more likely to have died in the study period than those who had no injury. Even of more concern, there was a 91% more likely to have been hospitalized for psychiatric problems. 55% more likely to have done less well in education. 52% more likely to have needed disability benefits. And it's estimated that there are about 2 million emergency room visits for traumatic brain injury every year in the US, in addition to hundreds of thousands of unreported incidents of head trauma, including undiagnosed concussions as it relates to sports. Research shows undiagnosed brain injuries are a major cause of depression, anxiety, drug and alcohol abuse, homelessness. There's a study from Toronto. 58% of the homeless men in Toronto had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. 42% of the homeless women. And females who have frontal lobe injuries, like hitting soccer balls, have significantly more disability than men who have frontal lobe injuries, because the female brain, 90% of her IQ is in the front part of her brain.
Amazing.
For men, it is more widely distributed.
So when I'm hearing this, what I'm hearing, besides how many lives are ruined, is this is a massive drain on society. So as far as, our resources, this is treating brain injuries would be far more effective than treating the after effect, than treating the consequences. So that's crazy.
Do you have a review?
I do. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Love listening to all the content you put out. It has helped me so much, and with my ADD and life. Thank you. That is from Pat Quest. Thank you so much.
We love the reviews. Please keep sending them in, because that way we know you're listening. There's just so much to talk about. We're not talking to
cyberspace air.
So some of the common symptoms of concussion, confusion, memory problems. We had that issue recently in our family, where someone just sort of forgot their day.
Yep.
Difficulty with concentration, difficulty with word finding, mental and physical fatigue, sleep problems, sensitivity to noise and light. Remember the Irlen syndrome we talked about? Moodiness, anger outbursts, anxiety, social isolation, vision problems, balance problem. So I said 91% of people, it affects their frontal lobes. About half of them, they have less activity in their cerebellum. So
they're likely to fall again then.
They're likely to fall again, increasing the risk of another concussion.
So as I'm reading this, because we've dealt with several people in our own family who have had these symptoms and had head injuries. So many people are told or somehow believe that it will be over with in a month or two. And that's not always true.
It depends on how severe it is. So there's actually a SPEC study by Jacobs, 1996. They looked at if your SPEC scan after a traumatic brain injury is normal, you have 100% chance that you're going to do fine. But if your SPEC scan right away is not normal, then it's actually not predictive. What's interesting is your scan at 9 months, if it's still troubled at 9 months, because the brain has a lot of healing mechanisms, if it's troubled at 9 months, it predicts you're going to continue to have trouble unless you go and rehabilitate the trauma.
So things like hyperbaric oxygen.
So it's all the things we talk about in this podcast.
Oh, I see. You're going to,
right?
I see.
It's
so
the
he's
bright
gonna
minds intervention that we talk about repeatedly.
We're going to talk about interventions in the next podcast, correct?
Well, we can do it anytime.
Because the nurse in me is like,
your
wanting to jump in.
beautiful brain wants to talk about it. But basically what I want you to think about are 3 things. If you've had a traumatic brain injury, brain envy, you got to care about it. It runs everything, right? Why I've been able to be married to this incredible woman is my brain lets me know what I want: kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship. And I act like that because that's what I want.
And you know, it really does help, because as somebody who didn't know this work before, when you start to see this work and you start to see, oh, okay, this is how certain foods affect my brain. This is how alcohol affects my brain. This is how anger affects my brain. This is how, like, you begin to
Negative
see
thinking.
things through a different lens.
Right.
And so
So-
you begin to behave differently.
Brain envy. You have to care about it. The second thing is you have to avoid anything that hurts it. And you just need to know the list. This is why you do not, let me repeat, you do not let your kids play tackle football.
But my
You
kid
do
wants to.
not let them hit soccer balls
But they want to.
with their head. Yes, I hear that. So I was at the Future of Medicine conference, and a friend of mine who's a billionaire says, but my son wants to play. In fact, I went and hired, you know, an NFL coach for him to teach him how to play football. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. Because he wants to do a brain damaging sport, you're going to allow him. In fact, you're going to get him a great coach. But what if he wanted to do cocaine? What if? Would you go find him the best drug dealer, the highest quality drug dealer you could? Because the level of damage is about the same.
See, that's crazy.
And I've scanned 1,000 cocaine addicts, and I've scanned probably 20,000 people with traumatic brain injury, and the level of damage is about the same.
So we have a friend who's a neurosurgeon who said the same thing, essentially. His son wants a neurosurgeon, and he knows. He actually agrees with all of this. He's like, yeah, but you got to let them do what they want. And I'm like, here's my philosophy. You give kids the most amount of control that is safe and reasonable at the age that they're at. And if they're not making good decisions, your job is to be their frontal lobes until they are, right? But you don't just let them do whatever they want.
And on the informed consent that parents have to
sign.
sign, you have to take responsibility. It does say death. But what it doesn't say is if you allow your children to play a contact sport where they are likely to get a concussion, that they're not going to be
As successful.
Or
as
That's
happy.
not there. That their grades may go down, that their likelihood of getting divorced will go up, that they'll actually have 4 times the level of depression, that's from my NFL study, as the general population.
If you
It
watch the
doesn't
movie
say
Concussion,
that.
it's pretty...
You need to protect their brains until theirs has developed. So I say this a lot around here at Amen Clinics. We need to be our patients' frontal lobes until we fix theirs. And as parents, you need to be your child's frontal lobes until theirs develops. And it's not 18. It's more like 25. So having them, we've had this discussion recently about, I'm actually a fan of kids staying close to home when they go to college, at least for the first couple of years, because their brain is nowhere near finished developing. And when I was 18, I went into the Army, but it was sort of like the good mother, right? And it was
The very strict mother.
structured. And when you did the right things, they promoted you and gave you more money. And when you did the wrong things, they thumped you consistently, predictably, reliably.
Yeah, they're pretty strict.
So, brain envy, that's number one. Avoid anything that hurts it, including sugar. There's this fascinating study from UCLA where they gave mice head injuries. So they whacked them in the head, poor mice. And one group of mice, they gave them a really healthy diet. The other group of mice, they gave them the really healthy diet plus fructose. And 3 weeks later, the group with the really healthy diet could run a maze that they already knew how to run. The one that got the added sugar were still confused.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that interesting? So the standard American diet, SAD, that is filled with sugar and foods that quickly turn to sugar, is delaying your ability to recover from a traumatic brain injury. Brain envy, avoid anything that hurts it. Do things that help it. Stay with us. When we finish this week on traumatic brain injury, we're going to talk about our healing program that we do at Amen Clinics.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.